On today's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast, we are going to be reviewing game week 1 of the new Premier League season. Back to the classic Football Fellowship format, and it was back to winning ways for last season's top 3. Arsenal, City and Liverpool all winning 2-0, and we'll be looking at how it went for them and how they set up. But it's Brighton who are top of the table after game week 1 with a huge 3-0 win over Everton, and a whole host of teams picking up points to follow them as well. And a new season of the Football Fellowship quiz. Make sure you stick around to play along for some more rounds of Guess the Club.
Welcome back, and it is glad to have the football back because finally we can stop talking about hypotheticals and actually start talking about the games of football. And the first game we're going to start off with is Chelsea 0, Manchester City 2. Quite unusual that you get 2 of the big 6 teams playing each other in game week 1 of the Premier League, but that's exactly what we had, and it was Manchester City, I think, as we all expected, getting the 3 points. But let's talk about Chelsea first, because depending on what you thought of Chelsea and your expectations for them this season, they either did really well or they met your expectations and did really poorly. What side of the fence were you on with them, Toby?
Yeah, I don't think it was a bad game for Chelsea by any stretch. I think they made some good chances for themselves. I'm not too sure about their setup. I think it's that same problem of which midfielders to fit in and where to fit them in. I think Nkunku out on the left didn't particularly work. I definitely think he should be more central in either the 9 or the 10. Enzo Fernandez sort of filling in that number 10 role that we've said has caused a few problems for Chelsea, not being able to find that balance. He doesn't feel quite natural in that number 10 position. But I think despite that, a few rejigs, obviously Lavia coming into the side, I definitely don't think it was a bad game for Chelsea. Maybe I think when I saw that there was no Rodri playing in this game, that it could have been similar to some of the games we saw last season where Chelsea looked really, really good on the attack, especially that 4-4 game, which was crazy, breaking through, and maybe they weren't able to do that as much, but I don't think it was a bad start for Chelsea, especially with everything going on around at the club at the moment. How did you see it for them?
Yeah, I also agree with you. I don't think it was a bad start. I think they definitely could have been better, but I don't think they were poor like a lot of people were making out on social media and in the mainstream media as well. I definitely think that this was a side comprised mainly of the players who did get draws against Chelsea last season, like you mentioned, plus the additions of Wesley Fofana, who unfortunately didn't play a single minute last season due to injury, plus the addition of Lavia in defensive midfield alongside Caicedo, who actually did really well for the 60-odd minutes that he was on the pitch. For someone who's lacked a lot of minutes, you could really see why Chelsea invested a lot of money into him last summer. And also Christopher Nkunku, hopefully fit now for the entire season. But I do agree. I think Nkunku out left, I'm not sure he has quite the pace in the Premier League to be as explosive of a winger. And I definitely think that Nicholas Jackson up front didn't have his best game, because we saw the Nicholas Jackson last season towards the back end where he was getting a few goals. He was very lively in the box, having a lot of movement, and he really had a chip on his shoulder, but he just really lacked movement, and the likes of Nkunku, Palmer and Fernandes behind him just couldn't find him in any space and any threat in front of goal. And I think maybe Cole Palmer was a bit isolated out on that right-hand side. I would have preferred to see him maybe in that number 10 position. I can understand Maresca for his first Chelsea game against Man City, difficult game for him, but he was at home. I do think that Caicedo and Lavia was a bit defensive. I can understand it, but you can't have Fernandes in the 10. I don't think he's a number 10. His back-to-goal play was quite poor, and the 2 chances that he did have on the edge of the box, both times he's trying to take a touch and really should be having first-time shots. So I think there's a lot of learning to be had with Chelsea and Maresca, but definitely not a overwhelming disappointment. Some teething problems initially, but I think any new manager is going to have that. For the next game, I would like to see maybe Enzo Fernandez further deeper alongside a Caicedo or Lavia, and I would like to see maybe a Madueke come to the front line, maybe even a Mykhailo Mudryk, because why not? Maybe Dewsbury Hall as well, a player that Maresca's brought in from Leicester. So a lot of positives, but a lot of things to be learning from as well. But in Manchester City, their imperious selves winning a game 2-0 away from home pretty comfortably. And I think, Kovacic was a player in the middle of the park who really shone for me.
Yeah, and I think that the problem with that balance in Chelsea's midfield was shown in that second goal for Manchester City with Kovacic. It was obviously late on in the game. I think their shape had been, at that point, it had really come apart, and there wasn't really much cohesion in the midfield for Chelsea to really try and get an equaliser in that game. And I think summarised not only how good Kovacic is, but also how good City's depth is, that without Rodri, they've still got Mateo Kovacic to come in and step into the side and do a job, and just picked up the ball, strolled. He made it look really easily, but it was the sort of minor movements that Kovacic does that made it so easy for him to stroll through that Chelsea midfield, and a really, really nice near post finish. Opened up his body to make it look like he was going to the far corner before hitting it into that near post. And yeah, a really, really nice goal. And again, even without Rodri, to have Kovacic and also having the ability of having a Kanji or Diaz to be able to step forward and step into that midfield as well to support him. Yeah, it's a good sign for City that they can control a game without him.
Yeah, that was an incredibly good job by Kovacic in the midfield. I think he was helped a lot by Rico Lewis, who was playing right back out of position and then inverting into midfield and almost playing sometimes in the forward line as well. It was almost like a 3-1-6, and Kovacic just controlling the entire midfield on his own with his ability on the ball. Rico Lewis was joining the attack, and he definitely did for Manchester City's first goal. It was because he was definitely dragging Caicedo away from the defence and making sure that he couldn't join in the back line and who needed help. And then the two players are Jeremy Doku and Savinha. I think Savinha for 45 minutes. That was a great 45 minutes on his debut. Really came to the Premier League and showed everyone exactly what he's on about. Initially, both of them started on the... Doku was on the right and Savinha was on the left. And after about 10 minutes, they swapped, and all of a sudden, they looked much, much better. Because I think Doku versus Cucurella was definitely up for the game, up for the challenge. And he definitely had... Doku on toast in the first 10 minutes, but then after that switch, Savinha and Doku were keeping the width really well, and Chelsea's backline was stretched and they couldn't really get anywhere near the Man City attackers, which ultimately left when Doku cut inside on the left hand side to put in the cross into the box. Erling Haaland was there. I think Bernardo Silva did get the touch. Obviously, it was checked for offside on Silva. He got the touch, and Haaland just had too much pace and power to get away from both Fofana and Cucurella, and he chipped it lovely over Robert Sanchez. And yeah, a 2-0 victory for Manchester City. And I don't think you can expect too much more, because I definitely think City were good, but not amazing. And I think also for the same, Chelsea were okay, but not amazing. And it was one where I think it was early on in the season, two teams weren't really going at it because they didn't want to be exposed defensively, and they did 10 shots I think Chelsea had in the game, Man City had 11. It wasn't the most exciting end-to-end of thriller, but I think City just get the 3 points and take it back to Manchester.
Yeah, I think especially after Man City do take that early lead 1-0 up, they know that they can control that game a little bit more. They don't need to be having as high of a press, having as high of possession. They can just control that ball in the midfield and defence, and that's exactly what they did to see that game out essentially. And because they know that Chelsea away is not going to be an easy game, no matter what sort of state Chelsea are in with their players and their squad and who's going to be playing. It's always going to be a tough game. So to get the job done and to do it and not look amazing, I think is a really good sign. And obviously, it being the first game of the season, there's going to be teething problems for both. They're, especially for Chelsea, going to be having a new system, new manager, a lot of new personnel. City still very recognisable, but again, as we always say, not quite up to speed just yet. But I think for a first game for City to have in what will hopefully be for them their fifth title in a row, I think it's a great start.
Yeah, and could I just ask you about Raheem Sterling's statement, which he came out with before the game? Well, not him, his representative, which of course he gave the green light to give out. And it was talking about how Raheem's come back from pre-season 2 weeks early. He's been playing really well and he expected to be involved in the matchday squad. Obviously, he got left out completely. I'm sure that decision was communicated to him probably on the Friday, maybe even the Saturday before the game. And obviously, him and his team have decided to wait on the statement and release it an hour and a half before kickoff. What were your thoughts on the statement and the timing of it?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one because he must not have been told almost by Maresca that maybe he's not going to be part of his plans for the upcoming season, whether it is coming from Maresca, whether it's coming from the club and obviously their transfer strategy of signing these really young players on long contracts and potentially making profit on them. Maybe they don't obviously see that in Raheem Sterling given his age. There must be some sort of miscommunication there between Sterling and the manager and the club, because he is going to be expected to be in that side. He is one of their senior players, one of their better players for sure. And I think that statement must have come from maybe a surprise a few days before. And now it seems like he's going to be moving away as well, potentially with West Ham looking like a likely destination. So it's a strange one, and it's one that it's a player that you could see really still making an impact in that Chelsea side. He's still a fantastic player. So yeah, I'm not too sure where that's coming from, whether it's the manager or the club, but it must be from one of them.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be too surprised if Chelsea are happy with the statement coming out as well, because it indicates to potential buyers that Sterling isn't happy at Chelsea. Chelsea, not including him, Maresca, not including him in the match squad, clearly shows that he's not favoured either, and it leaves the door open to any club who wants looking at potentially a winger and looking at Sterling going, yeah, he's available, we can try and get him. And I think especially from Chelsea's perspective, when he's got 3 years left on this contract, he's earning a reported £300,000 a week. Clearly, Chelsea don't want that on the books if it's a player that's not going to be used in the first team squad. So I think it's probably one that for all parties, I think Sterling needs to get a move away. And if West Ham or somewhere else, I've even heard links to Saudi Arabia. So I think for both parties, they need to separate and move ways, because I think with the addition of Neto, you think of Mudryk as well on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, they've got Palmer and Madueke. It just doesn't look like the space for him in that Chelsea squad anymore. But moving on then to Arsenal, who have no such issues with their playing squad, as they beat Wolverhampton Wanderers 2-0 at the Emirates. And I'll let you take it away with your boys, Toby, because 2-0, comfortable win on the day?
Yeah, not super comfortable. It definitely wasn't a flying start, I would say. I think Wolves are still a tough opposition, even when you are at home on first game of the season. And they didn't make it too easy, and we didn't look amazing, but a good 2-0 win and a result. And I think Saka and Havertz, obviously the two shining stars in that Arsenal side, a goal and an assist for both of them. The first, a lovely cross from Saka, headed in by Havertz, and the second, a really, really nice worked goal. I know Havertz got the assist, but I think Saka did 99% of the work on that one. Some nice quick feet. Showed again, similar to Kovacic, looking and opening up that body for the far post and just smashing in at the near post, and a great finish. So yeah, a really good start for Arsenal to have, and even Saka got 10 minutes of rest towards the end, so that's always a good thing and a rare sight to see for Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. You can clearly see that Mikel Arteta is learning perhaps from the end of last season. Yeah, and I think for Wolves, it was always going to be a tough game for them going away to the Emirates on the first game of the season. I think last season they went away to Old Trafford on the Monday night, which definitely wasn't an easy one either. And also they got shagged by VAR on that day as well. And I think they put up a good show. I think there was a fantastic header from Strand Larsen, who made his debut for them up top in the absence of Mateus Cunha. And if it wasn't for a world-class David Raya save down to his right, I think he probably could have got his first goal for the club, and also would have made the game 1-1 at that time, which would really, opened it up. And I think Wolves had a really good spell in the first 20 minutes of the second half as well. I think they were on top. I think they were in the ascendancy, but they just couldn't quite convert that into clear-cut chances for one of their front men to take. I thought that Rodrigo Gomez had a really great game as well on the left-hand side. I think at one point he really did bend wide and forced another great save from David Raya. And I definitely think that Wolves, despite losing Pedro Neto and Mix Gilman, they still have, really good players. And they're probably just gone under the radar because of the fact that they're young players who don't have the biggest of names. But I think Wolves, definitely show that they're a side to be threatened with going forward.
Yeah, and especially even with Mateus Cunha on the bench, which I think was a massive surprise. I'm not sure if that was potentially a fitness thing or just didn't fit into the system from the start. So yeah, to have that as an option off the bench, I think shows how good Wolves really are. And Pedro Neto will be a big miss, but I think if they can make as many chances against Arsenal and against another side, then yeah, they'll be looking good for the rest of the season too. Arsenal's attacking options, I think, yeah, obviously Saka and Havertz had a great game. Martinelli, he was able to get in some good positions, I think. Very direct as always, some great feet throughout the game, and it was just that end product, I think, still carrying over from last season, where he was struggling to get the ball into the box, struggling to pick the right pass at the right time, and I think that's quite highlighted, I think, by the player who he's going up for against in the starting lineup, which is Leandro Trossard, who maybe doesn't have the feet, maybe doesn't have the speed, but really does have that end product. So it's quite a difficult decision, I think, going forward, which one of those to pick, because they're both so different. And yeah, not the hottest of start from Martinelli, following on from last season, but I think Arteta wants to keep him in that starting line moving forward. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, and can I ask you actually about the Arsenal defence and the midfield? Because we saw in this game Zinchenko start at left back, we saw Calafiori on the bench, we saw Jhon Timber on the bench as well. Arsenal have a lot of options, but we also saw Declan Rice starting in midfield, and there were some worries, I suppose, when you see the amount of minutes that Declan Rice has played over the last 2 seasons for West Ham and Arsenal. What do you think the rotation is going to be like this season? Do you see a lot more players maybe playing 25 to 30 matches in all competitions and a couple playing the whole season? Because there was definitely an over reliance on Saka and Rice last year. How do you see the minutes generally of the Arsenal squad going forward?
I think with the signing of Mikel Moreno from Real Sociedad, I think that's something that we really, really need, especially with now that it seems like we are going to be consistently playing Partey or Jorginho as the number 6 with Declan Rice and Moreno as the cover as the left-sided 8, which I think works so much better and suits Rice's qualities much, much more. And it gives us a lot more control, I think, having Partey in that midfield. He's someone who we've really missed over the last sort of season, and I don't think it's been realised because of how good Declan Rice is. But I still think he's even better playing that left-sided 8 as opposed to playing the single pivot 6. So I think that brings a lot of balance to the side. And yeah, as I was saying, I think you've got Odegaard, who's obviously going to be that right-sided 8, play the majority of the season with Saka, and maybe Fabio Vieira sort of covering those positions, and Reece Nelson for cup games. I think those two are going to be playing a lot of minutes. But on the other side, on the left-hand side, yeah, Zinchenko, Timber, Calafiori can step into centre-back as well. Going to be a lot of rotation there, and then Moreno covering Rice as well. So I'm not too sure what our sort of strongest left-back is going to be. I think probably for games against teams who are going to be blocking lower, it's going to be Zinchenko. I think against teams where we are going to have to defend it a lot more, looking at Liverpool with Mohamed Salah or City with Doku or Savio, it's probably going to be Timber, who is really, really good defensively. And I think maybe against teams where not necessarily defending, but potentially against a high press is where we could see Calafiori stepping at the left back, someone who's very comfortable on the ball and is able to step in from those deeper positions, as opposed to Zinchenko, who normally picks the ball up a little bit higher. So to have 3 options, I think, at left back, a position where we have struggled with over the years, is really good progress. And it's exciting to see these players sort of fitting around the system too.
Yeah, a really close game between Arsenal and Wolves. And Arsenal go next week, they have to play Aston Villa, and Wolverhampton Wanderers next week have to play Chelsea. So definitely a tough two opening games for both sides there. But then we'll move on to one of the first newly promoted sides, which is Ipswich Town, as they hosted Liverpool. Unfortunately, they lost 2-0 at home, though. But there definitely felt like there was a sense of occasion around Portman Road. You could definitely see everyone hyping up Ipswich Town. They were on TV, of course. I mean, the camera was constantly panning over to Ed Sheeran as well. But I think ultimately they gave a really good account of themselves in their first game of the season. I think ultimately in the end the quality of Liverpool just shone through a little bit too much in that second half. But I think Ipswich, I was really impressed with them. I think Liam Delap up front looks like a good player. If he's going to score enough goals that they need, I'm not quite sure. But, he was trying his best up top against the likes of Joao Kwanzaa and Virgil van Dijk. 21 touches. He had 2 key passes. He won 1 of his 4 ground duels and 1 of his 3 aerial duels. And he lost possession 10 times. So not the best performance, but I was impressed with his work rate. And I think overall he will improve and he won't face a kind of opposition on a week-to-week basis. I was also really impressed with Amari Hutchinson. 3 out of 4 successful dribbles in the game. And I think if he can get his end product right, then I think he can be such a crucial player for Ipswich Town going forward. And I think all in all, they gave a really good account of themselves. How did you think of Ipswich first return back to the Premier League?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary in terms of that it was definitely a tale of 2 halves. I think Ipswich really restricted Liverpool very, very well in that first half. I think you only had 2 or 3 shots. XG was below 0.1, I think, at half time, and Ipswich were able to get a couple counters and a couple chances themselves, and they looked really dangerous on that counter attack, especially through Amari Hutchinson, who is very, very quick, very good feet. If he could have maybe on another day could have got a goal, I think. And yeah, that first half they did really, really well. Just into that second half, as you said, I think Liverpool's quality really shone through and they were able to completely dominate that second half. 6 big chances for Liverpool, over 60% possession, and an XG of over 2.5, I think really showed how much that flipped. And I'd be intrigued to hear your opinion on that second half. Do you think it was more Ipswich falling off or Liverpool really sort of stepping up a gear?
I definitely think Ipswich did fall off in that second half a little bit, and it's hard for any Premier League side to keep up the quality that they showed in the first half for the entire 90 minutes, especially on their first game. I think they definitely ran out of energy a little bit, and the sense of occasion got to them a little bit towards the end. But I think in terms of Liverpool as well, seeing this Liverpool side for the first time under new manager Arne Slot, I definitely think that the first half was definitely a much to be improved, let's say. I think it was definitely feeling Ipswich out a little bit, and I think in that second half, I think it first started with Arne Slot being quite ruthless and making the change at halftime of Kanate coming in for Kwanzaa. I think Kwanzaa did fine. I don't think he did terribly, but Slot then came out in this post-match interview and said it was because he wasn't winning enough duels. He wanted to get on top of Ipswich and impose themselves, and I think Kanate coming in really won a lot of more air duels, and him being in that side really allowed Trent Alexander-Arnold to play a lot more freely because Kanate's ability to be physical in the air and on the ground, win his duels, and also the pace that he has in behind and reading of the game, it lets Trent, be more free and in a way that no other right-sided centre-back can really do for Liverpool. And so I think Trent being a lot more free meant that Salah was able to get on the end of his passes a lot more, which then meant the entire front of the attack ended up being more clinical and getting more chances. And I think, I think it really showed that Liverpool were much better. And I think that's 5 minute spell where they scored the 2 goals. They could have got a couple in that spell as well. I think you said 6 big chances, you said. So yeah, I think Liverpool were much better. Salah getting another opening day goal, 9 in a row now. Jhon getting a goal, I think he's going to be a massive player for Liverpool this season. And I think the midfield of Gravenberch did really well in the six. Really impressed with him, considering the fact that Liverpool haven't been able to secure a six this summer. McAllister and Szoboszlai, again, in that kind of more advanced 8 position, almost a number 10, did really well as well. So I think from Liverpool perspective, I don't think there's too much to complain about. Definitely stuff to work on, especially in that first half. But that second half was, the stuff of dreams, because it was really fun to watch and it was amazingly clinical finishing as well.
That's a really interesting point about Kanate, and maybe something that I wouldn't have picked up if you wouldn't have sort of highlighted that substitute. I guess Kanate winning those duels means more that Liverpool are winning that ball higher up, which is giving Trent that chance to sort of progress forward a lot quicker. Whereas if his ball's coming over the top and Kwanzaa sort of letting the bounce running onto them and Liverpool having to work it up from deeper, you're asking a lot more of Trent to pick that ball up from a deeper position and drive it up. Where I think when he was picking that ball up at the halfway line, he was either producing some beautiful passes across the pitch, he was driving inside, he was driving out wide. He seemed to be that right side of the Ipswich half in that second half. He just completely dominated, and he really, really did look exceptional. And I think, as we expect, I think again it's going to be a massive, massive season for Trent, and hopefully sort of that slot system seems to be sort of allowing Trent to do that, because he is that good and should be given as much freedom as he can, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt really bad for Leif Davies, or the left back for Ipswich Town, who got a lot of assists last season. I think it was something like 14 or 15. And he was really exposed, because in that second half, Salah was running him up and down, ragged. Trent Alexander-Arnold was putting in balls on the left of him, onto the right of him, over the top, and he didn't really know what to do. His positioning was quite poor. I think he played Salah onside for the first goal, and for the second one, he switches off a little bit, and he thinks there's no way Salah's going to get the ball for his goal. He does get it, and I think that it really showed that, yes, it's huffed and puffed and really, gave a good account of themselves, but ultimately, in terms of in front of goal, there actually was 0.45. I think Alisson Becker only had 2 saves to make in the entirety of the game, and neither of them were pretty taxing. And next week they go away to Manchester City. So it's a very harsh reality of the Premier League. Yes, McKenna's an exciting manager. Yes, Ipswich have got a really good squad filled with some League One players, not too many, a lot of top quality Championship players, and some players who are ready for the Premier League. I think Amari Hutchinson, Liam Delap, I think Muric in goal, who unfortunately wasn't there today. I think they could have really used him. I do think that, though, he was a Christian Walton who came in goal for them, did alright. He did as well as he probably could have, but I do think it is the harsh reality of being in the Premier League. But the one positive is not too many games can be harder than Liverpool and Manchester City after these two.
Yeah, exactly. Get them out the way, and then try and pick up some points after that. Yeah, because Liverpool at home and then City away doesn't get much tougher than that. So, yeah. Shall we move on to another team who a lot of people may be predicting to be down towards the bottom of the table as well, is Everton, and they did not get off to a good start. Brighton 3, Everton 0. What did you make of this one, Mev?
Yeah, so I had a keen eye on this one just because We tipped Everton to do quite well. Maybe not European chasing, but without the point deduction, they would have been comfortably mid-table, and I think we expect them to be comfortably mid-table this season. And also, we're keeping an eye on Brighton development to see how new manager Fabian Hürzeler has set up his side and how well they did. And we'll come on to Brighton because I think they had a good game. I don't actually think they were too amazing. I think they had some great moments in the game, especially in the attacking third. But I think Everton, more so for me, were quite poor. And where is this coming from? I think Ashley Young starting at right back, I think, is a bit of a worry at 39 years of age because you think about the slow wingers in the Premier League, and I don't think that any team has any slow wingers. So I definitely think that's a worry. I think Michael Keane starting in this game was a worry. I did expect O'Brien to be starting, especially after he's bought in for, I think, £16 million from Lyon. That didn't quite happen. Sean Dyche came out of his post-match interview, said he wasn't ready and he preferred to play Michael Keane. Whereas I think Everton fans have known for a while that Michael Keane isn't quite ready. Again, Everton underperforming their XG. They didn't really create too many chances. I mean, one chance they did have was Dwight McNeil in their first half, but he was offside and he hit the post and then put the ball across the box as well. There was a lack of pace in the forward lines. It just, despite the fact that they had a good 20 minutes, it just seemed like Everton weren't ready for the start of the season, which is weird because we took them to do quite well. And I think they were better than they showed today, especially in the first game of the season at home. It was quite disappointing, I'll be honest. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but I just think there's more from this Everton side, and we didn't see it today.
Yeah, I think it was quite a cautious performance from Everton, and it completely backfired. I think a lot of the time when Brighton were picking up the ball and charging from deep, players were sort of backing off, not wanting to sort of commit and make challenges and try and win that ball high. It was just a lot of backtracking, but it was backtracking at the wrong times when you'd already sort of started to come forward and then being countered and not trying to win that ball. And it was quite easy at times, I think, for Brighton once they got moving and once a little tiny bit of space had opened up for Brighton to run through or to walk through or to pass through Everton a lot of the time, which is something that we just don't expect from Everton. We expect them to be doing the opposite, sort of starting at a low block and not allowing those counter opportunities to happen and then being able to counter themselves. It's something a lot we saw last season. But yeah, it was a strange performance from Everton and almost nothing like we saw them last year. And then in terms of Brighton, yeah, it was a interesting setup as well from them. We obviously saw Hinshelwood starting at left back. A lot of FPL owners, I think, will be disappointed that it wasn't Barco, who played a lot of pre-season and was hyped as the 4 million man on the bench. But Hinshelwood, yeah, had a good, comfortable game there. We saw Matoma back. We saw João Pedro at the number 10. Minter started, which I think, again, had a really, really good game. Looks like such an exciting player. And, yeah, nothing too crazy, I think, in the way that Brighton played. I think it was fairly similar to, I think, how they played last season. Very progressive, wanting to win the ball high, wanting to have possession high, and sort of not worrying too much about their defence. They did look a little bit open against Everton sometimes, but I think that's something that Brighton are still sort of continuing to risk, to play that high risk, high reward football. And in this game, it was definitely high reward, and their midfield and their attack, when they got that opportunity to attack, they looked really good.
Yeah, like you said, when they got those opportunities, because I think they were okay in general play, but it was those key attacking moments in which they've got arguably borderline world class, maybe world class, you could argue with Matoma, but I think they've got some really exciting players. I think Matoma, for the first goal, the way he just ran, I think he picked up the ball about 5 to 10 yards from his own penalty area, just drove straight at the Everton midfield, got past them, passed the ball to Minter, and then he carries on his run. Minter beats Mikalenko quite comfortably. It's actually quite frightening to see how a 20-year-old with that much pace and explosiveness was able to just get past an experienced Premier League defender and one who's known for his defensive work rather than his attacking work. And the way that Matoma was there on the back post, completely unmarked, for just a tap and a 1-0. And then I think the second and third goal as well, just the attacking play from Brighton was absolutely amazing. But Everton had a moment when it was still 1-0 to Brighton in that first half where Dominic Calvert-Lewin went down and the referee gave the penalty initially and then he went to VAR and it got overturned. What did you make of it? Did you think it was a penalty and do you think it was right that it was overturned?
Yeah, I'm honestly still not sure on this one. Obviously, looking at it, to me, it seems like Dominic Calvert-Lewin steps on Dunk's foot and then it's Dunk's foot sort of moves obviously towards the ball in a tackle as Calvert-Lewin's foot is on his. So I'm not too sure if it was sort of Dunk's foot came in and made the challenge. It almost seemed like one went on top and then it moved. So I don't really know if that should be classed as a foul or a penalty. I was surprising it was overturned, to be honest, because there was obviously contact. It must have been that the ref and the VAR team saw it, that it was more Calvert-Lewin initiating that contact and then going down. So for me, I completely understand why it was given in the first place, because obviously Dunk didn't really make any contact with the ball. And then the overturn seemed harsh, but I can definitely see the reasoning of why it was overturned when I watched it a few times. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I completely agree with your reasoning on that. I think in terms of with this season and VAR, with it being referees' call on the pitch, there needs to be a high threshold to overturn it, and I think that decision is at the very edge of the threshold of what you can and can't overturn. I think that is probably as harsh as I want to see an overturn. I want to give the referee on the pitch the benefit of the doubt and say, look, he's the one who's seeing it in real time and in real motion, because you always see this in slow-mo. And I think that I'm fine with that, but any less contact, and I wouldn't want to see it. Oh, no, sorry. Any more contact on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I wouldn't want to see it overturned. So I think that's fine. Although I did see some Everton fans saying maybe apparently the screen for the VAR wasn't working, and so I was just like, if that is the case, then that is absolutely bonkers. But let's not talk about VAR too much, because I think there is a couple more decisions later down which we also need to talk about, that and refereeing. The Premier League is back. Would you look at that? On Brighton, we predicted them to finish roughly mid-table. We're not really sure what to expect from them this season, but based on their attacking play, if they keep their attacking players fit, I mean, they could challenge anyone in the league, can't they?
I mean, yeah, if you've got Simon Adingra as someone who you can bring off the bench, the AFCON Young Player of the Year, for me, one of the most exciting young prospects in the league, to come on and score a goal and replace, I can't remember if it was Minter or Matoma, but even one of the two, to be able to have that as a backup is really, really good, and shows how good Brighton's depth is. It is just sort of the uncertainties, I think, about obviously their injury record was a massive, massive thing that affected them last season, something that hopefully they can avoid this season. And I still am not too convinced by that defence. You're obviously looking at Joel Veltman, I think, playing right back. Hinshelwood, who did have a decent game against Everton, but again, not potentially a natural left back, not had too much experience. And I think up against a stronger, more progressive, more courageous team, they will face some issues. I think when they do start to bomb forward and bring the ball forward as well as they do, that they still don't particularly have that cover to sort of protect themselves. But top of the league after game week 1, strong performance against what should have been a really, really good defence in Everton. Can't really complain. So if they can keep this momentum going and have a really good start like they did last year, then hopefully it should set them up a little bit better to carry on throughout the whole season this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Brighton fans are probably screaming, stop the count, let them win the Premier League title from here on in. But then we'll move on to West Ham United 1, Aston Villa 2. Two sides who spent a lot of money this season, recruited a lot of players. Aston Villa actually second for spending in world football, and West Ham sixth for all of that. However, only 3 new players started for both sides. Amadou Onana for Aston Villa and Max Gilman and Guido Rodriguez for West Ham. And it turned out that actually it was Aston Villa who took a very early lead in this one.
Yeah, 4 minutes into your debut to be able to get a goal. Doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, lovely corner over from Tielemans and an easy header. It was right on that perfect position just over the goalkeeper, where they're a little bit stranded. They're not too sure exactly what to do. And by the time it swings in and back round, they're completely lost. Defensive marking maybe lacking a little bit, but when it's Onana, who's 6'4", 6'5", timing that run to perfection and getting on the end of a really nice delivery. Yeah, a great start to Villa, and it set them up, I think, for the rest of that first half. They really dominated. I think Rodgers was picking up the ball, carrying it really well, driving them forward, as well as McGinn and Watkins. They looked like they were going to get a few more goals, and it was a really good start, especially away at West Ham for Villa, to see that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really intrigued to watch that Aston Villa midfield because, if you're honest, decimated because they lost Douglas Luiz to Juventus. And I also saw that Boubacar Kamara might not be available until November because of the injury he picked up at the end of last season. So I was really interested to see that Tielemans Onana dynamic, and I actually thought they did really well. I think it was more the fact that Aston Villa and Unai Emery have a system, and regardless of the players that they have, that they can bring in players into that system and they can produce the same result. I think that both Onana and Tielemans have a really good range of passing, probably not that world-class range of passing that I think Douglas Luiz had, but I also think they're both physical enough, both Premier League experienced players, and I actually think that midfield, is easily Champions League quality. So I thought, fair play to Aston Villa and the recruitment team of Unai Emery, because I thought they did a fantastic job in that midfield. And then, but obviously later on, West Ham do get themselves back into the game at 1-1. Lucas Paqueta scores a penalty after Matty Cash challenges Thomas Souček in the box. And this is another decision. I'm not quite sure about this one. This one, I think, is, if we're talking about on the line for VAR, I think this is just about a penalty, and VAR made the right decision on sticking with it as a penalty. What were your thoughts on this one, Toby?
Yeah, I agree. I think we've got two examples after each other, like you said, where one is just about to be overturned, and for me, again, yeah, this one is just about on the other side, just about fine to keep, because yes, there was a touch on the ball, but I think the contact that was being made that initiated the foul, that caused the penalty to be given, kind of irrelevant whether he got the touch of the ball, because he dragged Souček down sort of by the body. So I don't think the touch on the ball could really come into play in the circumstances. And yeah, for me, it was a penalty, and I think the right decision was made in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. We agree on that one. That's 2 for 2. Let's see if we carry on later on in the podcast. But yeah,
there's a few more to go through. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But it's actually Jhon Duran off the bench who got the winning goal for Aston Villa, a player who's been linked with a move away from Aston Villa and away from the Midlands. One of the reported clubs was West Ham, so it's quite funny to see him come off the bench and score and then celebrate the way he did, saying that he was definitely going to be staying by pointing to his chest and then pointing to the ground. What did you make of this finish? Because it was a really sweet strike, wasn't it?
Yeah, just as you said about he might move to West Ham, there's a screenshot of him on an Instagram live, I think it is, where he's doing the hammers symbol when people were saying in the chat to come to West Ham. So he seems to have completely flip-flopped, and fair play. If you get a late win like that with the Villa away end and the limbs, yeah, he's got to be celebrating like he did. But a nice finish, and again, I think this is going to be a good season and a good opportunity for Duran. I think he's a great backup to have for Watkins, sort of similar style that he will be playing on that last man, trying to stretch the play. But I think with Duran, you get an added physicality and something that's really, really good for Villa to have in those last sort of 15, 20 minutes of games. Bring him on, get him in the box. He's quick, he's strong, and he's a really, really good finisher, as we saw. And yeah, no surprise that I think other teams are sniffing around to try and sign him as sort of a starting striker for some teams potentially a little bit lower in the league table. But if Villa can keep hold of him as a backup striker, he's one of sort of the best super subs I think you could have really at the moment.
Yeah, and I think Villa did what Villa did. They're a top quality side, and they got the win away from home against a side who, have got a new manager, recruited really well over the summer. But what are your thoughts on West Ham, Toby? Because yes, I know Aston Villa is a very tough game at home. They next got Crystal Palace away, then Manchester City at home, Fulham away, and then Chelsea at home. So not the easiest first 5 games for Julian Lopetegui. Are there any positives that you think they could take into the games going forward, and how well do you think they'll do in the next 4 or 5 games?
Yeah, I think statistically this was a sort of a fairly even game. I think Villa did create the better chances, and they created them, I think, for sort of longer spells of the game. But overall, looking at the stats, West Ham did produce more XG, 2.46, a little bit skewed by 2 Souček chances right at the death, which were about 0.6 each, and then the penalty. To Villa's 2.03. Comparing big chances, they both had 4 each. Possession was fairly even, which I think is a massive one for West Ham, especially transitioning from that David Moyes low possession counter-attacking that we definitely would have seen against Villa if this was still Moyes in charge. To get even possession against Villa, who got Champions League football last season, is really, really impressive. And 14 to 15 shots. So I think some good signs to take for West Ham. New signings coming into the side, as you said, with Guido Rodriguez and Max Kilman. Still some players to come into that side as well. Obviously, looking at Saka and Somerville. Fulkrug as well is somebody who we saw late in the game coming on for Antonio. So I think to have a start as they did, to have good spells of the game, not to be able to completely dominate just yet. But yeah, similar position for me to sort of Chelsea, that it was an okay game with definitely some positives to take away, and also some things to learn, obviously coming up against a really good side in Aston Villa.
Yeah, and I think there was about a 10-minute spell. I think it was in the first half, or actually it might have been at the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, where Mohamed Kudus just absolutely ran the show, and he just looked like a world-class player because he made a couple of dribbles, and he was ducking and diving between players, and players were just unable to get the ball off him. And I thought he looked really, really good for a good spell. If he can keep that up for a whole 90 minutes and consistently over the course of the season. West Ham also don't have Europe this year, so that'll be a big help, and they'll give them more time to bed in the new players as well. I think they could be in a really, really good way going forward. But it is now time for the return of the famous Football Fellowship quiz.
Yes, let's get into it. So, yeah, to start us off for this new season, we're going to take it back. I think it was the first quiz we ever did on the podcast was Guess the Club. So, we've each gone away, got 5 players. We'll be naming them one by one to the other person. The earlier you can guess the club that links all 5 players, the more points you get, going from 5 points for getting it on that first player to getting the 1 point on the last player.
Yes, and I failed miserably last year on the quiz. I did well for a bit, and then you just came in late, right at the death, and just embarrassed me, actually. I think that's the only way to put it. So this time I am on my redemption arc. I have got to come back, and I've got to beat you this time, Toby. So it's personal. It's personal with me. And yeah, you're going down.
Wow, that's a lot of talk. That's a lot of talk. I did get the season dub last time, as Mev said, but I've heard he's been revising all summer, doing as many football quizzes as he can. So it's going to be a close contest again, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Yes. Do you want to go first, or shall I go first? You got the champion's advantage. You can choose.
Let's give you yours first. Let's go for that.
That's what I didn't want you to do. Because I'm going to fail miserably, and then you're going to feel comfortable and you're going to get it straight away. So,
come on. All right, let's go into it. Let's hop straight in with your first player for 5 points, and that is Milik. His first name, Arkadiusz Milik?
Yes.
I might have butchered that pronunciation.
So I'm pretty sure that's the Polish international. Who's also a striker. He's been around the block a little bit. Let's go with Napoli.
It is not Napoli, unfortunately, but he definitely did play for them.
Okay.
So that is a good guess to have on the board. And your second player for 4 points is Chicharito Hernandez.
Chicharito Hernandez. Okay. Played at Man United, Real Madrid. I think he went on loan to Bayer Leverkusen, I think. Was he at Juventus as well? I've no idea. I'll put that as a question mark. But also play with Milik. Let's go for Bayer Leverkusen.
And he started off with a 4-pointer.
Yes.
Absolutely smashed it, mate. Well done.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Milik was there for 2 seasons, 2013 to 15. Only played 6 games for them. And then Chicharito Hernandez, a 2-year spell as well. 54 games, 28 goals. So a really nice spell there for him. Your third player would have been Arturo Vidal.
Mm.
It would have then been Toni Kroos, who was only on loan there, which I had no idea. I thought Bayern signed him from Leverkusen, but he was already at Bayern and then was loaned there, which was interesting. And then fifth player would have been Kai Havertz. So yeah, 4 points to start us off. Well done, mate.
Oh, thank you. I feel like you've definitely niced me there. You've definitely given me an easy one to get me into.
I don't know. I forgot Hernandez played for them, to be honest. So that's why I thought, that's a good second player, because he wasn't obviously. He's played for a lot of clubs as well. So
yeah, to be fair, who was your third player? Do you say Arturo Vidal?
Yeah.
If you actually put him fourth, I think I would have been thrown off because I don't think I would have remembered that.
I think I had that originally as well, and I was thinking about throwing Danny Carvajal in there as well at some point, but that's annoying. Yeah. But 4 points, mate. It's a good start.
Oh, thank you very much. You definitely nice to me, I think. I'm not sure if I've done the same, but we'll see. Are you ready for yours?
Let's go. Yeah, let's go, boy.
All right. So, guess the club, and your first player for 5 points is Axel Tuanzebe.
Axel Tuanzebe. Okay. I'm pretty sure he's at Ipswich at the moment. But I don't think you do that. Obviously at United. He's had a lot of loan spells, I'm pretty sure. What, I feel like Blackburn, maybe. That he might have gone to on loan. Where else has he been? I'm pretty sure he's had another Championship loan spell. It's probably not Blackburn, but was he at Derby maybe? Let's just go for Blackburn because that came to my head straight away.
That is incorrect. I don't think he's ever played at Blackburn. Maybe? No, I'm not sure.
I don't know why that's there.
No, it's fine. Your second player for 4 points is Andre Desena.
Andre who?
Desena.
How's that spelled? D-I-S-A-N-O?
D-O-S-S-E-N-A.
E-N-A.
Never heard of him?
Never heard of him. Andre Desena? No, I'm not sure on this one, you know.
Oh.
I don't think you'll give me Tuanzebe at Ipswich now. But I don't know any other clubs. Let me think of where else has Tuanzebe been? Don't know. Let's just go for Ipswich.
No, that is incorrect. But it is the club that Tuanzebe is at the moment. He played against Liverpool, yeah.
I'll take it.
Your third player for 3 points is Bakayoko.
Okay, right.
That's Timothée, the French one.
The defensive midfielder one. Yeah.
I couldn't pronounce his first name, so I just went Bakayoko, but I was like, there is another Bakayoko.
So he was at Chelsea, Monaco, AC Milan. I'm pretty sure he had another spell, a loan spell potentially somewhere as well, whilst he was at Chelsea. Or maybe where he is now. I don't know where he was at before Monaco. Went Monaco to Chelsea. It's pretty terrible. Had a loan spell or two. AC Milan. Where could he be now? I definitely saw this the other day as well. But I can't think of it. So I will go for Tuanzebe at AC Milan or Monaco. Let's go AC Milan.
No, that is incorrect.
Rats.
So, your fourth player for 2 points is Kalidou Koulibaly.
Koulibaly. Oh, surely this is not going to be Chelsea. Oh, I'm pretty sure it's Napoli because I'm pretty sure Bakayoko was there. Tuanzebe would make sense, maybe why he's there. So it's Napoli, Chelsea, and he's at a Saudi side that I don't know, so I'm not even going to guess it. Oh, Napoli or Chelsea. That's annoying. Oh God, I don't know. Tuanzebe wouldn't be at Chelsea. There's no way, unless he was there before he was at United for something strange. Let's go Napoli.
And he's got it for 2 points. It is Napoli.
Thank goodness for that. That was worrying. I didn't want to start with 1 pointer, but we'll take 2.
No, yours were definitely harder than mine. I was hoping the Tuanzebe one by going first would throw you off because he only was at Napoli on a loan spell in 2022 when he still at Man United, and he made 2 appearances.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then Bakayoko was there on loan from Chelsea in the 2021, which is the COVID season. He made actually 44 appearances for them, so he did it right.
Nice.
Desena, you clearly were not scarred enough by him because he used to play for Liverpool. Yes, so he was signed, I think, either right at the end of the Rafa Benitez era or Roy Hodgson. Either way, it was a terrible period of time.
Period, nonetheless, yeah.
Yeah, so I was scarred by him, so that's why I knew him. And then obviously Koulibaly and the last one would have been Marek Hamsik.
Oh, what a man. The Napoli legend.
I know, yeah, so that probably would have given it away. But yeah, did very well there. Got 2 points in the end.
Yeah, and 4-2 after the first game week.
Come on!
Good start, mate.
Thank you. But as we know, in the quiz and also in fantasy football, that you don't always start the strongest, but then you always end up winning quite comfortably by the end.
It's just the saltier I get because I'm not winning, the harder I'll make it. So that's how it balances out.
And then I feel bad about giving you hard ones, so the next one will be easy. Don't worry about that.
Just keep flip-flopping between them.
Exactly. And we'll get back to the football then, as it was Brentford 2, Crystal Palace 1. And quite a shock result, I think maybe it's fair to say. I think these kind of results can happen, especially with two teams who are mid-table. However, I do think that we had high hopes for Crystal Palace, and they did start off the game really, really well. But to start off with, there was a disallowed goal for Eberechi Eze from a free kick, which was another one of the controversial calls that we talked about earlier on. What would you take on this one? Because the referee blew the whistle, so VAR before the ball went in the back of the net, so VAR couldn't intervene. The referee Sam Barrett apologised apparently to Eberechi on the pitch. What was your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, I think that was the key point that I think I missed initially and was a little bit confused. I thought, well, he's blowing the whistle and given a foul. If he thinks it's a foul, he should obviously just blow the whistle and give it, and the goal shouldn't stand. It didn't look like it was contentious whether it was a foul or not. You could see them given or not. It did seem like potentially there was a trip or a push from Hughes on the Brentford player. But then once I understood that obviously the whistle being before it had gone in the net meant that VAR didn't even have the opportunity to look at it, and I think that was the big mistake. And I think on this occasion it was just a mistake, and the referee forgetting that he should have let it go in and then blow his whistle, similar to how we see the offsides play out, where if it's a very close offside and it looks like the player's going to score, they'll leave it, let them score, then bring it back, which I think is a good system to have. And unfortunately it was missed on this one. Whether it would have been overturned and the goal was given, I'm not too sure. I think it probably was a foul, maybe. But the fact that there was no opportunity to even look at it was the big mistake in this one. So, yeah, it was bad from the referee, but I think it was just a lapse of judgment.
Yeah, I think he's quite a new referee. I haven't seen his face too much on TV, and I don't think it was a foul, but because with VAR, I don't think they would have overturned it if the referee clearly gave it on the pitch, which he did. So it's one where I think the referee's call there would have been the key element, and that's what's giving power to the referees on the pitch. However, like you said, the referee VAR didn't get a chance to have a look at it because the referee did blow it early. So one that I think it's nice that it was open and transparent and honest, and you got communication about it as the game was going on and fairly quickly. I will say, though, that if this wasn't Brentford and Crystal Palace, say this was the Chelsea-Man City game, I think there would be an absolute uproar about it. I think that the fact that it was Brentford Crystal Palace, with the greatest respect to those clubs, and probably it's still a big talking point this weekend, but I don't think it could have been as big as it probably would have been if it did involve two bigger sides. So one, I think that the new referees have probably got away with, and one that's good has happened early on in the season, so they can earmark that and say, look, we need to improve from this, and going forward we cannot allow this to happen. But let's go back to the football, because there were 3 goals to talk about, starting off with Brian Mbeumo, who scored 3 minutes after that goal was disallowed. And I think this is a lovely play from Brentford, and one where Brentford actually, both their goals, I think they were really well taken and were really well worked in the build-up as well. I think we mentioned that last season we were seeing Brentford trying to play out from the back and more attacking than progressive style of play, and it was kind of missed with all the injuries that they had, and they kind of reverted back to type. But I think these 2 goals from Brentford by Mbeumo and the second one by Wiesa later on in the game, I think they were really, really well worked.
Yeah, and they've started the season again without Tony by the seams of it. Obviously not in the matchday squad on this occasion, and it was Mbeumo and Wiesa again, who we saw at the start of last season get off to a really strong start. And Brentford looked good at the start of last season. They looked quite free-flowing. Schade obviously starting on the left wing last season, and was he the left winger this game?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Again, just a nice front 3 that I think will complement each other really, really well. And that first goal from Mbeumo, lovely run, really nice finish from him. And I think he is a player that I think we do forget about sometimes. That obviously all the talk about Ivan Toney and is he going to move? Is he going to play? Oh, he's so good. But then you've got the players around him like Mbeumo, like Wiesa, like Schade, who keep stepping up and should probably get a little bit more praise for how well Brentford can play when they're at their best.
Yeah, I do worry though with Brentford that Wiesa, if Brentford have aspirations of going even higher, I think Wiesa is a great backup option. But if you're a side who are just, I don't know, 10th to 17th, then I feel like Wiesa is probably the perfect striker for you. And that's no insult to Wiesa. I just think that Brentford could maybe do better, and obviously they got Igor Thiago, who is obviously out injured until December. So when he comes in, hopefully eventually he will be taking the number 1 spot. But if in the meantime Wiesa can really step up and score maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 goals between now and Christmas, then I think he's got to have that starting number shirt, and he's going to be the starting striker week in, week out for Brentford. So yeah, I definitely think that he's quite an underrated striker, and let's see if he's got the level to take it up another notch or not. But then the Crystal Palace goal, Ethan Pinnock, quite an unfortunate own goal, this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just one of those where it was a really good ball across. And it's one of those where if the centre-back goes for it, it's an own goal. If they leave it, somebody else is probably going to stick it in. So it was not really much you could do on that one.
No, and to touch on Crystal Palace and Oliver Glasner's side, it did seem like a lot of the play was going through Eberechi Eze, and once the other four players had it, they looked good, but they didn't look threatening the same way that Eberechi Eze was. And it is one where I do wonder with Elise moving to Bayern Munich, is it going to be one where teams are going to be focusing on Eze and it's now going to be up to the other players to step up? I do think that Daji Kamada had a good game. I think he had some really good touches. I mean, his play was really good. He defended well as well when needed to. But I don't think he was quite threatening in the same way that Eze was and Elise would have been. I think Sa coming on was again okay, but I don't think it was great. And it is one where I'm going to have to see Crystal Palace going forward in the next few weeks just to see how they play. Obviously, if Marque is to leave and join Newcastle, as Newcastle, I think I made the fourth bid now as well for him, how that one develops, if it's going to develop or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I think there's definitely some question marks around Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I think without Elise, as you said, a lot of that chance creation is now on Eze as being the one to not only pick up that ball and carry that ball forward as he did so well last season, but to also make those final passes and those crosses. There's a lot of reliance on him now, and the players who are in those positions sort of around him, Mateta, Edouard, Ayew, Kamada and Sarr, I don't think any of them are particularly sort of elite chance creators. I think they're normally people who you would expect to be on the end of passes, and now with Eze and Wharton and Hughes behind him, both a really, really nice partnership in midfield, but again, not somebody who's going to be making chances. So I think they either need to have someone very creative alongside Eze or to press that sort of chance creation out to those wing backs as well in Mitchell and Munoz, who are both really, really good. Munoz especially, I think, is somebody who will step up as the season progresses as being someone who's going to be bombing forward, getting crosses into Mateta and sort of being another outlet for Palace that isn't just going through Eze.
Yeah, obviously Munoz kind of got the assist for their goal because obviously he didn't put it in, so it doesn't really count, unfortunately, for him and fancy football owners. I do also think that Mitchell had a shot in that first half which went really far wide. I think if he needs to be practicing his final product because he's going to be really important, like you said. I also think that Jhon Mateta picked up an injury in that game as well. So if he's going to be out for a while, that's going to be a worry. Obviously, he played a lot of games last season. He then went to the Olympics with France as well, and now he's already back playing Premier League football. So I think it's one where he's just had too many minutes in his legs, and I think an injury's finally caught up with him. And I think also that Edouard is good. I don't think he's as good as Mateta, but I definitely think he can fill it in. But I think, yeah, one to keep an eye on with Crystal Palace going forward. But then we should move on then to the Friday night game, which was Manchester United 1, Fulham 0. Man United and Fulham opening the Premier League season. And it wasn't the most exciting games, if we're being honest. Thankfully, we got a goal and it wasn't a 0-0 draw. But I think, what did you make of Man United and Fulham in the first game?
Yeah, I think Man United looked pretty decent. I think it was a good game for them. They made a very nice amount of chances. They had an XG of almost 2.5. Some good moves. I think they looked a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more sort of free flowing and a lot less rigid, I think, in Ten Hag's game plan that we saw last season. There seemed to be more freedom, I think, given to the wingers, and yeah, it was a good game. It was nice to see Xerxes come on and score. I was surprised he wasn't starting, to be honest, and they were obviously trying with, was it Fernandes playing up front in the first half, and just, I don't think that works. I think that really restricts what Fernandes is best at, doesn't suit him, and I don't think it suits the wingers around him to have him as that focal point of the attack. And I think Joshua Xerxes is a really good player. I was very impressed that United signed him, especially probably a position that they wouldn't need, obviously, with Højlund. They don't have a backup, I think, to go and get a player, an elite striker like Xerxes, where a lot of clubs were sniffing around at him being their sort of locked in starting number 9. To have him off the bench and score, I think, is great, and hopefully we'll see him starting next week. Yeah, it was a good start for United. Made 4 big chances overall. Fulham were okay, didn't really get too many opportunities, I think, to progress out, and I think that was probably a lot of that was because United really restricted them and kept the ball to themselves.
Yeah, I think for Fulham it is a tough fixture to go away in your first game of the season. I do think that Robinson picked up exactly where he left off from last season. I think he did a really good job on Amad Diallo and also Garnacho when he came on. I do think that the only time in the game where he did kind of switch off, kind of gave his man a little bit of space was for the goal when Garnacho passed it into Xerxes. Apart from that, I thought he was fantastic, and I'm surprised that maybe club hasn't come up for him in the summer, but Fulham are definitely going to have to keep a hold of him. I thought that Emil Smith-Rowe had a okay game. I don't think it was brilliant. I don't think it was bad. I think it was one where he's definitely trying to fit his way into this new side. I think Fulham shifted slightly from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3. It definitely seemed like Sacha Lukic was the sole defensive midfielder, the sole number 6, and he had Andres Pereira to his right and Emil Smith-Rowe to his left, who was slightly more advanced and gave him a bit more freedom as well. And he did have a few successful dribbles, got past the press of the United midfield, but I did see like we wanted a little bit more from him. And it's going to be one where, he's going to be the main man, he's going to get a lot of minutes. He was taken off after 60 minutes. So going forward, you're going to need a little bit more from him. But I think it's an okay start to the season for him. And obviously, Rodrigo Muniz up top, who I'm unsure if he's going to carry on his hot streak or not, but based on the evidence of the first game against Man United, I'm a lot more comforted by his performance because I thought he was real handful with Maguire and who was the other centre back? Martinez as well, and really think he put himself about. And yeah, I've got no worries about him continuing his form last season because he looked really good.
Yeah, I think as well as I was saying, Man United play, and obviously they had some new players coming in, Xerxes and Delict off the bench, and then Mazraoui starting, who had a good game. I don't think it was bad from Fulham at all. I think, as you said, it's just a tough fixture to go to United away, and there are still some really good signs showing from Fulham. I don't think they really look like they missed Palhinha a lot. I do really like Sasa Lukic actually, and I think he is able to do that job as a sole 6 on his own. And I think having Pereira and Smith-Rowe either side of him does provide a decent amount of balance. Maybe Pereira and Smith-Rowe a little bit attacking to sort of play as 2 8s, but yeah, under Marco Silva, I still think Fulham will be okay, and it wasn't a bad game for them.
No, absolutely not. I do think they maybe need a little bit more in the wide areas as well. I don't think they were as threatening as they possibly could have been, especially without Dama Traore. He's got that electric pace, you know about that, but his final product just isn't quite there. But then finally on Man United, I think, yeah, like you said, definitely seen a lot more of a coherent system, definitely seen a bit more passing triangles, and there's a bit more of a solid plan. You know what's going on with Man United. It'll be interesting to see how they go for the remainder of the season because obviously they've got Europa League football as well to contend with as a result of winning the FA Cup. How many injuries are they going to get? We obviously saw Matthijs de Ligt come off the bench as well. Very interesting that Ten Hag took both the centre backs off and he replaced them with 2 new centre backs. Especially when you're 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, I can understand that maybe fitness levels aren't quite there, especially first game of the season. You had a long Euros as well. Players haven't really had the best pre-seasons, but definitely a brave and bold decision to make. Clearly paid off, wasn't the end of the world. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Man United can offer going forward. I definitely think that next week when they got Brighton and Hove Albion away, that's definitely going to be a game that I'm keeping an eye out. How Brighton are going to do after beating Everton 3-0, how Man United are going to do. I think that's one that we definitely need to keep an eye on as well. But then we'll move on to Newcastle 1, Southampton 0, which was, the second newly promoted side of the game week. And I was really impressed with Southampton. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I've got that written down exactly. I think they looked really good. In that second half as well, 84% possession and 15 shots, I think is so impressive. And I know obviously Newcastle were down to 10 men at that point, and obviously we will be talking about the contentious decision to send off Fabian Hürzeler. But I think for a newly promoted side away at Newcastle, one of the toughest grounds to go to, one of the better sides in the league, even with 10 men, you'd still expect Newcastle to not dominate, but to create some chances, to have a bit more of the ball. And they just didn't, because Southampton was so good at keeping that ball, so good at using that ball effectively, and so good at restricting Newcastle in countering against them. Really well set up. And although they weren't able to get an equaliser, although they weren't able to get another goal, I think they really took full advantage of coming up against 10 men. And it was a really assured performance from Southampton in that second half. And to start the season, I think like that, as I said, away at Newcastle, I think is a really good sign of things to come. Yeah, just unlucky for them not to really take anything away from it, even if they were helped by the red card.
Yeah, I watched the full 90 of this game because I really wanted to keep an eye out for the three newly promoted sides. Obviously, we're recording this on the Monday, so unable to watch Leicester just yet. But I think Southampton, I think probably their best play came before the red card, because I think Newcastle were a bit more open, and then after the red card, Newcastle were sitting quite deep, and it was difficult for them to break them down. But I do think that they were playing a 3-4-3. I think Sugawara on the right wing back, who's joined from AZ Alkmaar, was really attacking. He was high and wide, joining the front line at times. And I think they were kind of playing an asymmetric formation with Kyle Walker-Peters at left wing back, coming into the midfield, joining them and overloading Newcastle's midfield. And I think they played really, really well up until that red card. I think you can maybe be a bit cynical and say that you're away from home, yes, but your opposition is down to 10 men from the 28th minute onwards. You really need to be scoring. You really need to be capitalizing, because if you're not winning those games, then you're going to have more difficult games against better sides with 11 men, 11 versus 11. So you really need to be taking your chances when you get them. I mean, the next year 1.77. Brereton Diaz definitely did have a big chance as well. I think two actually. I think Southampton had 19 shots, 4 only on target, but 3 big chances. So yeah, you could be a bit cynical and say they definitely need to be taking the chances. Some definite bright spots, but I think Russell Martin will be disappointed as I couldn't come away with a little bit more. But let's talk about the red card, because we've been talking around it. Fabian Hürzeler sent off for violent conduct on Brereton Diaz. What were your thoughts on it?
I don't think it was a red card. I think it was a bad decision for him to be sent off. But I also think it was an absolutely stupid decision for Fabian Hürzeler to react the way that he did. Yes, Brereton Diaz has sort of barged into the back of him, but to stand straight up, push him, and then put your head in, you are kind of asking for trouble from the referee, I think, at that point. I don't think the contact with his head was enough for it to be classed as violent conduct and for it to be sent off. And obviously, Brereton Diaz is going to play up to that. It's Premier League football, that it would be silly for him not to do that, to try and get him sent off. These players are doing everything they can to win the game, and unfortunately overacting in that way is just part of the game, and it shouldn't have been a red card, but it was just a bad decision, I think, from Shah to put himself in a situation where he could have got one, really. So yeah, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. I mean, just a term. If you didn't watch the game and you didn't watch what happened, and then you see afterwards that Fabian Hürzeler got sent off for violent conduct, and then you see that's not what you call violent conduct. So the referee, I can't remember his name, I don't know who it was, but got a lot of stick for this one. But in terms of implementing the rules of the game, I think the referee made the right decision in sending a Fabian Hürzeler, and I completely agree. What an idiot, Fabian Hürzeler. What are you doing? Experienced player as well for club and country. But I think what I have an issue is with the actual rules, the laws of the game. I don't think that should be a red card, based on the fact that if it's violent conduct, what I want to see if someone's being sent off is for it to be actual violent conduct. If Fabian Hürzeler draws his head back and then goes in with power to try and hurt deliberately Brereton Diaz, then that is an absolute red card and he should be sent off. But the fact that Fabian Hürzeler is now suspended for 3 games as a result of that, I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it should be a red card. So my issue is more with the laws of the game rather than the way the referee implemented them, because I think the referee actually did the right thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think especially the way that, obviously, as soon as the referee sees someone's head, and as soon as that opportunity is given to the other player to touch their face and cover their face and drop to the ground, unfortunately at that point it probably does have to be a red card because of the rules, as you said, whether it should be or shouldn't. And Newcastle were able to get a goal after that, which I think it obviously came from a mistake from McCarthy. Isak picked up the ball and found Joelinton really, really nicely in a crowded penalty area for a good finish. But that game could have gone a lot different for Newcastle. Down to 10 men, if they hadn't have had that goal as a result of the mistake from McCarthy, if Southampton were able to make the most of the possession that they had, create a few better chances or take those chances better when they came, it could have been a completely different game. So I think this one is sort of a lucky escape from Newcastle, given the situation that they were put in.
Yeah, and I just want to touch about the Alex McCarthy mistake for Newcastle's goal, because when I saw Gavin Basuni get an injury in the Championship last season towards the back end, I did worry, because that's the difference between having a ball-playing goalkeeper and a goalkeeper who's trying to play from the back, because you can clearly see that Alex McCarthy, if you pause it as he gets the ball, he's got his right centre back and right back to his right hand side, completely free, unmarked, and that's where the ball should be going. But he decides to take it back into the left hand side, try and pass it to the left back, I think it was. I don't know who he's really trying to pass to. Both were quite marked, and then he ends up mistiming the pass, playing it into straight to Alexander Isak, and it is a bad error. And I think it is one where that is completely avoidable. And I think the way they conceded the goal after Newcastle were down to 10 men, and the fact that they weren't able to convert their chances, yes, there were so many positives for Southampton to take from that game, but I also think Russell Martin would be bitterly disappointed that they didn't at least get a draw, and the fact that it was 0-0 when Newcastle went down to 10 men. I think we should really be talking about Southampton getting all 3 points from this match.
Yeah, and that's a difficult decision for Russell Martin to make, is whether, without a backup ball-playing goalkeeper, do you change the system that obviously you've been implementing all of your time as a manager, all throughout last season, all through pre-season, going into this season? Do you change that because of the high risk that obviously having a goalkeeper who can't do that as well? Or do you just have to stick it out and have those risks that obviously McCarthy is a good goalkeeper? I think he's a good shot stopper and a good backup, but just not comfortable playing out from the back. Do you keep it as it is and have that risk? And I think, to be honest, he's probably going to keep the system as it is, and maybe there will be some more times like this where it's a bit twitchy.
Yeah, and speaking of backup goalkeepers, the transfer market is actually still open. So if they want to make a loan move or a permanent transfer for a goalkeeper, then they can still do that now, as well as the forward areas. Because yes, they had Ben Brennan, yes, they had Adam Armstrong, but the options that came off the bench were Cameron Archer, who didn't have a great time at Sheffield United, obviously weirdly got re-signed by Aston Villa, then sold to Southampton in the same summer, and obviously Carlos Alcaraz as well. I think Southampton probably need another one, probably an out-and-out striker. That's probably going to cost a lot of money, but I don't know who that is. But I definitely think there's definitely work to be done for Southampton in the transfer market, but early signs are that they look all right. But then we'll move on to the final game of the game week, which was two sides who were in the Premier League last season. Nottingham Forest won, Bournemouth won. And we should probably start off by saying well wishes to Danilo, who broke his ankle very early on in the game. There's some quite worrying signs in about the 10th minute of the game when the referee ushered the medics to come on immediately. Obviously, he's fine. Broken his ankle, probably be out for a couple of months now, but that is a big blow to Nottingham Forest. But then if we talk about the football, 1-1 draw, what did you make of both sides on your first impressions of the season?
Yeah, I think both sides looked good. I think Forest did look better than maybe I was expecting. Maybe not taking into account how good their home form was last year and how much I think they relied on that to pick up points. They looked so good and so comfortable at home. It was in those away games where they did seem to struggle. But yeah, they looked good. They've got a nice shape. They've got a good balance, I think, between their attack and their defence. And it was a good performance from them. And then on the other side, in terms of Bournemouth, I was a little bit worried about them this season. Without Dominic Solanke, how much will that disrupt their play? Will they sort of change their system a little bit? And even without their new signing in Evan Nilsson from Porto, which is a huge signing for Bournemouth, I still think they looked good and they still had some really good moments, still created some good chances. And overall, I think it was an even game and a good start to the season for both of them.
Yeah, and, pat yourself on the back, Tobes, because we did the first video of the season, which was one thing to fix for every Premier League club. And you said that if Dominic Solanke was to leave and to join Tottenham Hotspur, which he did, that Bournemouth need to go out, sign a striker, and you actually recommended Evan Nilsson. And I was shaking my head. You couldn't see me, but I was shaking my head because I thought that is way too of an optimistic signing. He's way too good a player. He's not going to go to Bournemouth. And you called it. You put your chest out there, and you know what? You were absolutely right.
Yeah, Iraola was calling me up in the week after the podcast, just making sure if it was all good to go through. So he's glad they got it done in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clear that the Bournemouth scouting network also use FBref as well.
Yep, just got similar players. Dominic Solanke, Evan Nilsson's right there. That's all you need. Simple. Yeah, it's like when sometimes you think to yourself, have a football club just use Football Manager for the scouting network for some of these young players. I think Chelsea's recruitment strategy is exactly that. Yeah, just Google search young career mode talents and then Chelsea sign them on an 8-year contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think since we started recording, João Felix is joining Chelsea, so there's another one. But anyway, we're talking about Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. And Yeah, early shouts. Maybe perhaps we've underestimated Nottingham Forest because the way they played, especially when they're moving the ball quickly, and that's a key point because when they were slowing it down, they did look a bit susceptible to Bournemouth's press, which we know under Urilla has been really good, and the way he's implemented so quickly. I do think that when Forest are playing quickly between Hudson-Odoi, between Anthony Elanga, and between Morgan Gibbs-White, they do really get around you quickly with their high intensity, their work rate, and the fact that they are really good players who haven't quite worked out at bigger clubs. All three of them, could have potentially made it at other clubs, but the fact that Nottingham Forest and the link-up play between them is so good, and the fact that when they do eventually get their way to the forward is that you just need someone to put the ball in the back of the net, and it was an extremely scruffy goal for Nottingham Forest and Chris Wood, but he is in the right place at the right time, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Chris Wood is there. He is somebody who is going to be a target man, sitting, waiting for those balls to come in from Elanga, from Gibbs-White, from Hudson-Odoi, and to finish it, that is what he is best at. Great in the air and great at poaching and being in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly what he's done. So, yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that, again, he'll probably have a decent goal-scoring system. I think enough chances will come up from Forest, and especially the way that Forest play, it's either sort of a counter-attacking through Elanga or Hudson-Odoi, or if they do work that ball up the pitch, we do see a lot of the time those early crosses coming in from wide where Wood excels at. So yeah, they've got a nice unit going forward there, and it does seem like they work really well together.
Yeah, and I actually think Ibrahim Sangare was actually really, really good in that midfield. Obviously joined from PSV for a lot of hype last summer. Didn't quite work out, didn't play too many games, but I think in this game against Bournemouth, he arguably was the pick of the midfielders on both teams, and I think if he can stay fit and he plays consistently, then there'll be clubs in the top six and some of the top clubs in Europe sniffing around him, because I think he had a fantastic game, and hopefully early signs that Nottingham Forest are going to do really, really well. Obviously, big disappointment was they wasn't able to hold on to their lead. 86 minutes, Semenyo with the goal for Bournemouth, and it was such a scruffy goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, his clearance then came off, I think it was Murillo's head, just fell straight to Semenyo and was able to put it in. But it was good play from Bournemouth, I think, to sort of work their way back into that game and get that opportunity for a lucky ball to fall like that. And Semenyo, yeah, definitely someone who I think had a good season last year, but it still feels like I think he could have an even better one this year. He's a really, really good player, and I think if he does work on that final product a little bit more in terms of finishing difficult chances, in terms of, I think, making those killer passes. I think when he picks up that ball and runs, he looks so good. So he's definitely one to keep an eye out for this year, and definitely going to be one of Bournemouth's most important players. So good for him to get on the score sheet nice and early this season.
Yeah, and especially out of position, playing up front in the absence of a recognised striker. So yeah, done really, really well. And I think we've done really well for our first one of the season. I think that's it, isn't it?
That's a great review, a great self-review. We have done really well.
Yeah, we have done well, haven't we? 5 stars. Please recommend, tell a friend. Yeah,
got to keep it positive.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is really nice to finally be talking about the football as well and not just hypotheticals. But yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify, please give us 5 stars. Tell a friend, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Anything we can improve, tell us what you like. We're all ears, and we will be here every single week for the rest of the seasons. This is only one, there's still 37 more to go. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in the next one.